the usual, isn't it? All right, welcome everyone to the Design Leadership Fire Session. So if you just log in, you can just type where you come from. If you're watching this video, just type in the comments where you come from. We would love to hear who you are, what kind of designer you are, and where you come from. We are starting today the Design Leadership Fire Session, which is going to be about scaling the value of design. With me, I'm going to have Michael Tam, the Global Design Director for IBM iX, the Big Blue, and Chris Lane, Head of Design of Jarden. And me, Erico Lisboa, I'm the Business Design Leader here at APAC at Echoes. We are an independent global innovation lab driven by design. Echoes, designing desirable futures. We have three business models. One is the School of Design Thinking, which is hosting the event here today, the innovation projects and the ventures. We help business creating value and innovate for good. We're helping people and organizations master the innovation mindsets, skills, and tools. We are global. We are present in North America, Brazil, Portugal, Italy, Australia, and we are always expanding and growing. We have been helped more than 40,000 professionals in our campus back in Brazil, Rio, and São Paulo, and more than 70,000 professionals get upskilled and certified through our online courses. We have also more than 150 projects developed. We are also part of the Global Design Thinking Alliance. We're very proud of being part of the Global Design Thinking Alliance, and we are the only innovation lab that's part of the Global Design Thinking Alliance. How good is that? In 2 weeks' time, actually, on the 9th of May, starts the season 2 of the Design Leadership. From the Design Leadership, you're going to learn from the top global leaders how you can reach your next step into the design leadership. You're going to have a program that's going to be taken for 12 weeks. And during this 12 weeks program, you're going to be learning the design from design and innovation leaders, how this will change your career practice. You can upskill yourself. That's going to be amazing. It's a pretty good program, guys. And the learning experience is about so you can be ready to grow. In this experience, we go through the necessary abilities for each necessary area that involves design leadership. It means you and the others, you and the systems, you and yourself, and you and the products and services that you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be learning from heavyweights of the design: Bridget Manna, Bruce Moll, Vivian Castillo, Adam Lawrence, Lucas Coelho, Jenny Liqueta, Stephen Gates, Peter Melholtz, Phil Balagas. Wow, this is just like, there's a lot of content over there. And I strongly advise you, if you can make it, just jump in next week, 9th of May. And it's going to be to the 3rd of August. We're going to have global master classes on Monday, 6 a.m. or 7 p.m. New York time. You can participate live or you can watch it because everything will be recorded. And also we're going to have local workshops on Wednesday evenings in our specific location. Today, we're going to be talking about it's about scaling the value of design. That's the question that everyone is asking nowadays, isn't it, guys? And here with me again, Michael Tam, Global Design Director of the IBM iX, Chris Lane, Head of Design at Jarden, an investment company, and Erico Lisboa, which is me. I'm hosting with the business design lead here at APAC at Echoes. So I think I'm going to just pass the word for Michael Tam, the co-hosting, and if you guys, and Chris, so if you guys can just please introduce yourselves, a quick brief about yourselves and how you connect with design leadership. And let's get on the fire session around scaling the value of design, how we should do that. How should we scale the value of design? Should we get the brand promise and attach to the products and services that we're delivering? Should we get the value of design and, I don't know, like maybe attach it to the OKR, KPIs? How can we scale the value of design, bridging the gap from the insights and the customer experience? I don't know. We all want to know. Please, Michael, the floor is with you. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Erico, for setting us up and hosting us. So I'm Michael Tam. I'm Global Design Director at IBM iX, which is the experience design consulting arm of IBM. So if you can think of consultancy, we work with a lot of traditional enterprises, helping them to co-create together to transform the business. And which is why I'm connected to Chris, because we actually worked together on one of the projects when he was in Air New Zealand. And we turns out become friends. We just kept our relationship. We kept our conversations going. Actually, every month we will hop on a call and have a chat about all sorts of topics related to design. And of course, this particular topic is quite close to our hearts. So, which is why I'm very happy to have Chris joining us today. And Chris, why don't you give us a quick download of your background? From I guess from Air New Zealand to Jordan as well.
So I'm Chris Lane. I've been working in design in its various forms it's probably getting up to 20 years now. And that's both across agency as well as corporate. So, have done the sort of the hard yards in the agency of selling design, and then through to moving into the corporate world across, as Michael mentioned, the Air New Zealand, and then now into the financial services investment banking space. And so really it's been a lot of where I've been learning is, often when you're in an agency, people come to you thinking that they want a certain type of design, whereas moving into the corporate space is really understanding what the business is trying to do and adapting the way that you actually sell design into different ways of how it works for them, because often you can be wrong, but you get a lot of value in being wrong when you're working internally at a corporate, whereas in an agency, you can't actually admit that you have got things wrong.
And is that one of the biggest learning?
I think it's a really sort of fascinating idea of any time during the design process, you're trying to understand what people are trying to do, and then you're asking but why is that? Oh, but why is that? Oh, but why is that? Within a agency model, someone internally has generally advocated for design to happen or a problem that needs to be solved through a design problem. Whereas when you're working within a corporate, they often don't know how to solve a problem. And so it's really talking through, guiding, and then sort of really, not using a process like it's, everything can flex up and flex down, understanding what the problem is to try and solve, and then using different design methods in order to unlock that problem.
That's what I love about having conversations with Chris. He would go straight to the truth, and a lot of the time is this kind of candid truth that we really need to have this kind of conversation as as design leaders, especially when we need to assess the circumstances and the situation and the challenges that we face with our organization, whether it is on the consulting side, agency side, or with in-house. As Chris said, there's huge difference in terms of how we have to address those challenges. So I think you sort of touched on that already, like understanding the differences, and then also speaking the truth of those kind of challenges. So I think that would sort of kind of come under, we probably circle back a little bit later to that, but it will come under the topic of understanding organization values first. I think it is a challenge, no matter if you are consulting, walking into a partnership with a large enterprise. How could you understand the values of that particular organization? And then, of course, when you are an in-house designer or design leader, how do you figure that out? How do you navigate that? How would you suggest us to do that, Chris?
What would be the first step?
Yeah, what would be the first step?
Well, I think it's like there's different sort of forms of what you're talking about in terms of understanding design organizational values. Like there's the is it a new position that has been created, and then you're sort of trying to probe as to are you thinking of design as market differentiation? Are you thinking of design as new functional unit? Are you thinking of design as process change or like a cultural kind of part to it? Or are you already within an organization and you're actually trying to change the conversation around design? So, you know, like really it sort of comes back to the design process, like, you know, that understanding where you are, trying to sort of figure out, you know, where the edges of the box are, because often, you know, understanding where ambiguity is where designers thrive. Organizations are full of ambiguity, and, you know, but they're also full of really interesting problems to solve. And so, you know, a lot of the real skills of, you know, getting the value of design is, you know, even though we're all remote, like we still rely on, we are humans and we still rely on, hey, I don't know how to solve this type thing. So there is a real kind of key thing around, you know, talking to people, getting out there and actually meeting people and starting to do things. But if we sort of bring it back to organizational values, you know, being within a design function within an organization can be bruising. Like there's no way around that. Like, you know, it's fun, it's over the top, it's exhilarating, but, you know, like you are a different function to what the business has traditionally thought of. And so recognizing how you can actually have air cover from the executive, you need that, like understanding that organizational value first, you know, like how, in terms of if there's a chief people officer, is there a cultural change that they're trying to instill in the organization? Like design is really good at sort of adding a level of mentality to sort of different people, or is it functionally it's looking to improve an operations space, or, you know, what are, like, is the business in a thrive? Is it in a survive? Or is it, you know, just maintaining and it's heard design's a good thing and it just needs to add it to it? Like each of those things mean that you adapt your design process or what you're sort of proposing as to what they think.
So you
really
think? Oh, sorry,
yeah,
because I just got very curious. So you think like it's about, so when you're gonna go to find the values on the corporation, you normally go through the initiatives that they have through the OKRs and KPIs, and you attach the design to that, or in cascading down from the purpose and in the initiatives to the final product and service delivered.
So like the great thing about any sort of corporate values is that usually they've been made in quite a specific way. So different functions can all see something, you know, like client-centered or customer-centered is something that, you know, drives decision-making, but also means that it's actually, you know, how do you bring customers in earlier around sort of finding things out? So really, you know, moving people away from the design being cross-functional, design sort of leading into it can enable. That's a really sort of important thing to have a conversation with, you know, people leaders, people management, people and culture. But then if you're talking about design as differentiator, you know, that may actually be a really good thing in order to talk to a business unit head or anything else like that. So it's the, how do you find a unmet need? How do you find a, you know, an underserved populace? Or, you know, is it actually that culturally within the organization, you're hearing a lot of, you know, squeaky wheels, like the operations part of the organization is really struggling to actually do things because, you know, they do lots of manual labor, or, you know, they you know, design can actually enable the transformation part of the conversation. And so, you know, having those conversations. So are you talking to the exec level? Are you talking to the sort of level below? Are you talking about how to empower it? Each of those conversations, they, from a 30,000 foot view to the ground view, like those are all really important in order to actually understand the problem that it is that you're trying to solve. Because I think, most organizations like the idea of an off-the-shelf operating model, like we'll just take that one and we'll sort of do it. That doesn't really help always with design. Like design can flex, design can sort of change. Is it the Spotify model? Is it the Apple model? Is it Salesforce model? Like, what sort of form are, how do you match design to the industry that it's operating in, rather than just, we're not bespoke. We sort of scale of, do we need to scale up service design rather than UX design? Or, are we an organization that is moving from a build our own sort of tooling through to adopting someone else's tooling? And so it's understanding those strategic views that really sort of drives how you talk about design and what the value of and the profile of the design team as well.
Pretty good, Riggs. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Michael?
I think it's interesting you mentioned about two angle to look at the role of design. First of all, you mentioned, when you are, no matter you're a designer getting a, sort of a mid-level, entry level or mid-level job, or you become a design leader, walking into a more, into a more executive facing job, you're talking about the role of your job, right? You need to define it in order to understand where are those ambiguity you should be focusing on. And then of course, the next part of that is the organization role, which is related to how the organization look at maybe innovation or changes, and how they could position design within the role of the design team. So balancing these two things as one individual, you need to navigate from the first moment you encounter a company talking to your hiring manager to actually being a job. That is one hell of a journey. And that's a huge challenge. And a lot of the time, one of the biggest challenges, especially when you're defining your job, even your hiring manager wouldn't have a clue. They actually hiring you to come in to figure that out, figure out that ambiguity to define it. So what would be some of the key steps you would take, or some of the tips you can give us, to navigate that?
So organizations are interesting beasts, and they're always changing and adapting. Really, there are key questions that you ask at each of those stages. Like, you're right, the hiring manager is often in the, unknowing the unknown. They're trying to sort of sense whether you're a culture fit with the organization, rather than, trying to sort of bring in a change maker. But then when you actually sort of start to meet, the other people, or the, both direct reporting lines and indirect reporting lines, sensing those, are you what are they sort of looking after? And I think the really important thing around design is design can be quite looking at its own belly button. It can spend a bit too much time talking about process, or talking about sort of even, different types of design plays. Most of the time, if you're talking to an exec level, they don't have time, they're impatient, they just want to sort of know an answer. So you talk in, I have an answer, I am confident, this is how we're getting there, through to the team that are actually delivering, going back to the core of scaling design, you want to give them the curiosity that there are different ways of approaching the same problem. Most of the time, it's in different ways of sort of solving. The problem becomes rote. It's the same thing that you do over and over again. And that's, if you compare to an agency model, an agency doesn't actually want, it wants to solve the same problem faster and faster because that's actually how it makes money. Whereas within an organization, if it gets to the right solution and actually finds value. And I think it's really interesting to figure out where the organization places value. Like there is the intrinsic value of your bottom line dollars, but then there is also the repeat customers or customer value or anything else like that. And design, much like the value of a customer, is a more soft value, but you need to know that you're comparing that against hard values as well. So how do you start to quantify those things? Because I wouldn't ask any executive in order to fund a design program unless it actually had a returnable value to the business. And that returnable value may be longer term, but you still need to put a price on it. And, to be perfectly honest, be on the hook for it.
I guess in some way that conversation is sort of touch on to what we're going to talk about, finding the balance of innovation and change through design. Starting that conversation with executives to sponsor, whether it's a program or any sort of initiative, is a lot of the time is trying to justify whether that innovation or that change is a necessity. And a lot of the time, innovation and changes could be just two sides of a coin, right? How do you see? How do you look at that?
Yeah, like the interesting thing is innovation is sexy. It's something that has been desired for the last 10 years. Innovation labs have often been, executives have been frustrated with trying to deliver internally. So they set up innovation as a, down the road, separated from the rest of the team, and then really in sort of 5 years' time after you realize value through innovation, there's the pain of actually integrating it back into your business. To the core, like you're right, design and innovation are two sides of the same coin. Design is, slower or can be slower because it's, fundamentally it's like the way that I think about it is organizational change, and organizational change is a lot harder to do rather than setting up an innovation lab at the, outside of the purview of the main part of the organization. But the methods that are used between those two spaces are actually the same. And it's just really sort of understanding and sort of rolling things out.
Yeah, I found out that,
Eric, you
sorry, yeah, I just got excited here on that because I found out that back in the day, when we start like to build a business, you go through the value chain. There's a name for it, the value chain. So that's exactly where the value goes through. And in the area of, I noticed that from the past years, the research and development area kind of disappeared for a while, and now is coming back as discovery and design.
Like everything operates in cycles, and like there's a innovation cycle, there's a sort of return back to your sort of core, bring your core sort of stronger. The idea of even the friction between design research versus market research, like there's a lot more nuance around how do we actually, are we going horizon 1? Are we going horizon 3? Like, where are we actually focusing our efforts? And that like those type of things of if there is a mismatch of where the business wants to be versus where it actually can deliver. Like it's the great book, The Knowing Doing Gap. Like, no amount of design plays are actually going to sort of get you into that part if you don't actually know how to do what you need to do.
Oh, amazing insight.
What's the book name again? That's an interesting one. Knowing Doing Gap, did you say?
Yeah.
Who's the writer?
I have no idea.
Okay, we'll just look it up. Google it. All right. So you sort of touch on at the end of the day, innovation, balancing innovation and changes is always come back to the, I guess, the, Eric will touch on the value chain, justifying the business outcome. I think that's something we all of us, agree on from the first moment, especially as we move into more of a leadership role. That is going to be the conversation we talk about, which is great. With the master class, that's actually one of the key topic, right? When we talk about scaling value. But how do we facilitate that change of expectation? That's a very big challenge, because like you said, there's so many different kind of innovation labs, whether it's within or even consultants. Sometimes you work with a client that is a part of a proposal to create a center of design excellence, right? So pretty much essentially it's the same thing, because people ask for it because they want to be able to see a much more tangible manifestation of that function of design. But at the same time, we do understand design is much more intangible. How do we facilitate the change of expectation and the perception of that?
So it's an interesting one. Like you need to almost use the whatever the remit that you've been given. Like you need to treat it like a Trojan horse. Like there's no way that you're going to actually, most organizations, they look inside their industry. They don't look to adjacent or analogous industries. They often don't look outside of the way that they've always done things. Designers are usually insanely curious and sort of are like, oh yeah, but what about this? What about this? And so really, anytime that there is a design function and, that's design in all its causes, like you need to deliver value. Like there's no way of, design can't be slow anymore. Like it can't be, tell me what your problem is, I'll see you in a year's time or see you in 9 months' time. And so showing value is sometimes, you have to do the work that is expected of you, but you have to sort of use that work in order to uncover the additional opportunities, because usually design in any of its form, whether it be graphic design or communication design, whether it be UX design, whether it be service design, often it uncovers a whole heap of either pain points or problem areas which either haven't been listened to, haven't been understood, or are ignored. And really, the core tenets of design are that we can often make those things real. We can sort of make them, it's not just the squeaky wheel within the organization. Like any organization or any work that you're doing is really, you're uncovering an iceberg and you're sort of really showing the interplay between a whole heap of things. Because often as a designer, you're asked for something that's either customer facing or, business facing. But, there's a whole heap of things that actually orchestrate that. And so when you actually, designers are often the cross-functional team and cross-disciplinary team. So it is incredibly good at seeing problems, in a digital space from how an API or how the software architecture is built and how that actually impacts on, customer choices or how business logic shows up to the customer, through to the service sort of side of things of, there are themes that are emerging from where customers want or how customers are changing, and how does that actually impact on, in 5 years' time, someone else is going to eat your lunch or anything else like that.
Very good. Yeah, that's nice. Very good. And so that means that that we need also to maybe to create an environment for the understanding of the senior manager for the business, for the understanding of the business, that they can also be open to face a new value that may be created.
Yeah, and I think that sort of comes back to the organizational value, like is curiosity key or like built into the sort of the DNA of the organization? Like designers can be impatient and designers can be sort of wanting to explore, and you need, like, at a exec level or a CEO level, you need to manage that. Like you can't be swinging from one OKR to a completely opposite OKR the next year type thing. Like it is a 3 to 5 year plan in terms of how you're sort of going, and really sort of focusing in on that curiosity piggybacks on how you can actually start to instill curiosity. Like coming back to scaling design, there aren't enough designers in the world. IBM's done a really great job of scaling design, a design curriculum and rolling out that type of thing. But really the key sort of skills that can actually be developed are an empathy of design, a curiosity of design, and democratization of design. And so, design shouldn't be just with designers. And design, like the design thinking toolkits are a great example of those. But how do you get to the next stage? How do you start to move away from best practice is great, but also best practice can actually lock you into a process blindness as well. And so, like, what are the guardrails and what are the frameworks that you're using in order to actually choose things? And that is really where experienced design leaders are going for. Like there are multiple ways to solve a problem. Like what compromises are we going to get through to in order to actually solve that problem?
I think it's interesting with the topic of, you actually just touch on it, design as a function versus design as mentality, because a lot of the time whether the organization would have a struggle to define that. Should we also that also affect a lot of the time the executive will be swinging from one OKR. I was thinking, trying to give you a target to hit functionally, or the next year it suddenly become, hey, drive the adoption of design across everyone, and then suddenly your objectives and your measurement KPI is all changed, and that would definitely be a struggle for designers as well, not just the design leaders.
Well, like I think any part of an organization would feel bruised if their remit was changing year on year. Design seems to be one that is often changing. Coming back to the organization it's a bit like the Tower of Babel. Like everyone's talking in a different language, and design is a good sort of bridger between those languages. But really, design and mentality is really a people and culture focus. Like, how do you actually raise the bar, change the way that people are thinking, get away from sort of solutions focused, or we've always done this before type thing. And then designer's function is really how design shows up. Like, design can actually be, everyone can have design in their job title. Is it an internal training program? Is it a series of skills? Is it design coaching? Rather than just actually, the standard, closed off, white-walled studio room with post-it notes and all of those type of things that you bring people to. Like, design needs to be embedded. Design needs to be everywhere, rather than just actually held by a small group of people within the organization.
That's actually, I reckon, is related to another topic we didn't quite highlight in here, but I think is quite true, is the maturity of a region. or maturity of, well, maturity of a company, design maturity of a company to maturity of a region. Because earlier you touched on at IBM, we did a pretty good job, when we sort of having a design renaissance from the headquarters in North America, and then come up with our enterprise design thinking as a mean to scale design to non-designers. Everyone practice a designer mindset, human-centered approach. But then when it comes to a certain, I guess, certain studio or certain area, region in the world, there's always a struggle, because with the people in that region might not be seeing design as a mentality thing, but more as a functional thing. So that is a huge challenge. And a lot of time, whenever you mention design or design thinking, they would think about making things pretty. How actually, both of you, how would you see it?
But there's a really interesting, I do think that there are regional differences that happen around design. Like, I've spent quite a lot of my design career being based in the Antipodes, so New Zealand and Australia, but working internationally. New Zealand and Australia are, much smaller than, a USA or Europe type thing. And so, both of those countries really breed T-shaped people, the IDEO terms, because there's less people to do. So then they need to do a lot more, and they need to sort of stretch. And so, the New Zealand kind of model is, everyone's actually a bit of a designer. They've just never been given that title or known that title. But then when you actually start working with organizations that are, quite large, multinationals, then that's when the sort of the deep specialization happens. And so, from a guy with a Kiwi accent, going in and sort of seeing an American company or a Europe company or even a sort of Chinese company, you start to sort of see different types of problems. It's a slightly different problem in the New Zealand, Australia region of, we can do it ourselves. Whereas
number 8 wire mentality, huh?
that's the Kiwi one, but exactly. But through to the the Americas and the Europes and the Chinas, it's actually about breaking down silos. And so there's different problems in both spaces, but ultimately we as designers are relatively flexible. Like we spend some time, like we're always sit back, we observe, we make an understanding of the mental model of we map out the sort of the space that we're in, and then we usually if you've worked in an agency especially, you're quite good at picking where the success factor is, because when you're in an agency in a pitch cycle, you have the hard discussions of should we do this job or should we not do this job, which you don't actually have within a corporate. Like often, most of the time, have a choice. design functions within a corporate don't operate in an agency model, they operate in a studio model. So they just take the next piece of item off the list. Whereas you need to bring a bit of agency mentality to a corporate in order to actually choose the value, which then goes back to delivering up to the executive level and changing the conversation that's happening around design in order to move it away from you don't know what you don't know through to case studying and going, hey, what you asked was this, what we delivered was this, see what, this is how we did it. It's design isn't this black box, design isn't hard, design isn't scary. How do we actually start to do more of this work and how do we scale it out?
Wow. Well, you just blew my mind again. Don't know how to follow it. Erico, you got any thoughts on that? From
I strongly believe
perspective,
that,
obviously you work around different regions as well. Would love to hear your thoughts.
I believe that the design as a mentality, which is related to the culture, so design-led culture, let's put it like that, it's strongly the success and how you can scale that is strongly attached to psychological safety. So and then so then people, when they feel that they can thrive, they can share, they can build together. Yeah. And as you say, each place is a different from another one. So some places you're just not going to have the room enough to be open and to share the challenges and the value that you find, or that you believe that you can find, and maybe some opportunity, and you can try some hypotheses over there on this specific opportunity. And the psychological safety, especially when like the leadership is in the room, is very important. So you can have actually like the accurate data, which is surrounded by the real truth. So of the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression of the designer. So that's my take on the design as a mindset. And around the design as a function is more around the design operations. How can we improve the processes and tools, and how can we use it better? Can we invent something together? It's more about like hands-on, stuff. Yeah, I strongly agree with everything that you said around that as well, Chris. Michael?
There's a lot of challenges, but obviously, as Chris have outlined, in a lot of those challenges is all sort of scattered across from all the way from your personal role, how you take on working with others, changing their output, how they be measured, to changing the organization mentality, how they approach design, how they view design. And then of course, you need to able to identify where are those opportunities are, and sort of prioritize them, and try and error, right? Pick and choose. But I think you can't do it alone. Right, you no matter how good you are as a designer or design leader, you can't do it alone. So how would you look for people, the collaborators, to drive this change together? I personally would do it. I always look for catalysts, but I look at it from different sort of level. I always look for executive. I think earlier you touched on, if you have an executive sponsor or executive, air cover, I think that would give you a lot of good ground. And then always look for some sort of a, well, what we call it IBM wild ducks sort of collaborators, those followers who could, willing to go through the wall with you together. But how would you do it, Chris? Especially, I know you joined like your new role at Jardin for not long ago, I think 6 months, maybe roughly. So like especially when you get to a new place, how do you, because everyone expects you to make changes right away. You're being hired, especially as a leader, you're being hired to make the changes. So how will you do it? How do you find these people who could do it together and bring them along?
Like, I was lucky enough to set expectations early. So I said in the process of before I started of, I want to spend 3 months actually understanding the problem before I actually propose changes. For a different type of executive that may have not been palatable. I've been incredibly lucky on those type of things. But, going back to the point of design happens in many places within an organization. And, when you're talking about collaborators, that can be collaborators that have, the creative sector is already deeply embedded, whether the marketing group or the brand group or anything else like that. But then there's usually different, there's the boring stuff within an organization where design can really sort of add value, like how, the service desk works within an organization, like that's people that are dealing with, they're scaling out because they're sort of talking about things. They're often problem solvers. What can you use in order to give them design methods or design skills in order to actually try and do things? Like, is it, facilitating how do they do a triaging system or anything else like that? Like, it's, it's making those design things real. And, the collaborators, in order to drive change, are, from a selfish way, are also really beneficial for you, because when you have multiple advocates within an organization at multiple levels, then the echo of, design is not just you as a design leader saying that design is good. You have people that have been, may have been previously hostile, may have been sort of relatively open to it. But if they're the people that, they often have the ear of many other people, like those are the help, generally it comes back to just being a good citizen. You're helping other people within the organization, and, you're not expecting anything of it, because, design is actually about improvement. So, the core thing of what we're doing is actually making their lives better. And then, you say, oh, by the way, that was the design process, because going in and saying, we're going to do the design process. Often people have been, there's scar tissue within an organization of it's tried it before, hasn't operationalized it, etc. You need to sort of come in, it's not traditional design. Like I'm thinking 80s type design, like I wasn't around during the 80s. Well, I was kind of around during the 80s, but it isn't the top
we
down.
all are, don't worry.
Top down, sort of looking down. I am the capital D designer. It is the, I am staring at my shoes. I just want to be here to help. I'm a facilitator. I'm not a driver. I'm giving you the skills in order to actually do this stuff rather than anything else.
So what do you reckon about, let's say you adopt some initiatives like road shows or something like that, so then you can find collaborators and start to cross-pollinate and everything? Are you a big fan of that or what?
Yeah, like road shows are really sort of, they're good, but people are astute. They understand that a roadshow is a roadshow, and whether it's a sales pitch from an internal team or a external party, like everyone's always trying to sell you something. Yeah. Often the roadshows are a really good awareness builder, but really the conversion, if we think about it as a sales funnel, is the conversation that happens afterwards. I never thought that something could happen that way. How are the advocates that were, I'm a big sort of believer in the people that did the design process, so not the designers, but the people that were brought through the process. They're actually the advocates that say what they did. Like, they're not going to use all the right words, all the design terminology. They say it in their words, and that's actually a really important thing for you to use your ears to listen to, because that actually reflects what the their part of the organization really values, really sort of finds important. And then that actually helps you to sharpen your design pitch, because design is always pitching. And so when you hear in a roadshow what people are saying, that's when you can kind of go, okay, I need to sort of ramp up customer focus, or I need to ramp up empowering others, or I need to sort of ramp up the transformation sort of style. So yeah, like, deep believer in roadshows, but they're,
it's not just about road shows. It's not just about like road shows themselves. It's also about like creating the community, telling the story, sharing the aha moments, bringing people. That's what's more, creating guilds, probably.
Chapter. One of the other really interesting, and I never expected it to be a way to advocate for design, but because the design's been so cool, often you have, after a roadshow or whatever, you often have people coming up to you saying that their child is going through a design school or something else like that. And that sort of curiosity is actually, comes from their family life, comes from their home life, but it actually starts them thinking about different ways of doing their current job. So, whether they are accountants, whether they are, in some other sort of business function, that is a much better opener in order to sort of say, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? How can I help you? Because that's ultimately what it's about, is how can I help you?
Love it. designer being a good citizen. That's the first time I heard it, and it came from Chris. I think that's fantastic. I think it's it really shifts the mindset of how we look at designer as a role and the design team as part of our organization, right? And how lucky we are at a time when we all could sit together, talk about this kind of topic. Like you know, like you said, the you know, back in the 80s when the designer with the, you know, capital D, that is a totally different world. And now I think it's sort of also reflect and echo the rest of the how leadership is all about. Back then you got to be, you know, the upfront, the general and all that. Now it's completely changed. You got to be a people leader, sort of, you know, people servant sort of approach, just the same as you said, you know, being a good citizen. And a lot of the time isn't really about selling, it's about helping, you know, doing good. And I think that's one of the great way. I think we're coming sort of close to the end of it, so I just want to leave you guys with this lovely quote I just heard from my colleagues the other day. It's from our ex IBM design GM. He's retiring and moving on other phase of his life, Phil Gilbert. And he said, design leadership is business leadership, so that design is advantage to deliver outcomes. I think at the core of it is exactly what you were talking about, Chris.
That's a really good
shifting
quote.
that mindset, right?
That's
it's a really lovely quote, right?
Quote.
Blew me away when I saw
Michael.
that.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm happy to, you know, this is what we are doing, you know, right, is to do good with each other, to share. And I think just like Chris was saying.
Well, that's amazing, guys. So I'm going to jump in here to the next one. I think we learned a lot. We learned a lot from the past minutes, as we always do on the Fire Sessions. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Michael, for coming here. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. If you are watching this recording, if you have any questions, please just write down on the comments. And it's gonna be a pleasure to come back to you and give you the answers of your questions. And a little bit of housekeeping here before we close. On the 9th of August to the 3rd of August, we are gonna go to our Design Leadership Master Classes, Global Season 2. The Global Master Classes will be on Monday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. New York time. You can participate live or watch it because everything will be recorded. Local workshops on Wednesday evenings in your specific region. And we do have a present, a gift for you, actually. So if you're watching this video here right now, you can scan the QR code and have 15% discount on the Design Leadership Program Season 2. If you have any questions about it, just please write me an email over there. My email is over there, erico.lisboa@echoes.cc. You can also download the Design Leadership ebook, which covers some of the topics that we discussed here today. I would like to say thank you very, very, very much to Michael Tam, the Global Design Director of IBM X, and Chris Lane, Head of Design at Jarden, and everyone that is watching this recording here today and being part of the webinar. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.